without further ado, Ethan Carter of the Hockey Writers is joining us right now. How you doing, man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. All right, so we'll get right into it. So first, what do the Blues have to do to get back to Stanley Cup contention?
Well, I think it all starts probably with re-signing Pietrangelo, and we don't know if that's going to happen. But I think if you look outside of that, you're not going to have Tarasenko for the first 5 months of next season, at least. I would say we're probably looking around February, maybe, depending on when the season starts. Who knows how far into the season we will be at that point? I think you have to remake your decor around whether you get Petrangelo back or not. So if you don't get him back, you're really looking at probably a top pairing of Parayko and Falk, or Marco Scandella jumps up with Colton Parayko. And then offensively, I think you got to get more scoring, because I think if you lose Tarasenko for the amount of time they're going to lose him, you got to get a guy in there that's going to score 20 for you. And that's probably a trade market guy or a low bargain free agent. Look at a veteran like Patrick Marleau, if he wants to keep playing and play for a contender, or Ilya Kovalchuk, someone like that can come in there. I don't think either of those guys would score 20, depending on who they're playing with. But you got to get a guy in there that can score some goals, because they're going to lose a lot with Tarasenko. And I think the other thing that you look at is maybe adding a little bit more speed. So the Blues are not a very fast team. I think that's obvious at this point. If you get a guy in there like Jordan Kyrou, who's a big prospect who played some big minutes for them this season, you get a guy in there like that can skate on that third line probably. I think that would help. But it's all going to start with whether they re-sign Pietrangelo or not, and really how Binnington plays will be a big part of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you kind of segued into our next one for us. With Jake Allen now in Montreal, the Blues have kind of solidified that this is Jordan Binnington's team. How much faith does this group have in him after a kind of mediocre season and he struggled in the playoffs?
Well, I think this team is very confident in him, because, he goes out and wins the Stanley Cup in 2019, right? But he follows it up, and he wasn't that good. He won a lot of games last year. He's won 54 games and 54 wins in 83 games in his early parts of his career now. His save percentage has stayed under 920 both seasons. Well, overall for his career in the first 3 seasons. His first season was absurd, how good it was. But
Yep.
I think the team is very confident in him, and I think that starts with the coaching. I think the coaching staff really likes Binnington. He wasn't good in the playoff. He was so bad in the playoffs that Jake Allen had to come in, and Jake Allen was very good. But I think moving Allen was the right move, considering you need cap space to get Pietrangelo, because you move him, you still have 5.1 left. But I think, they like Binnington a lot. They're very confident. But Ville Husso as the backup should be interesting. I'm not sure how his game will translate to this level, but they're very confident in Binnington. And I think that this is his team, see what he does with it. And, he's got to get it going. He's got to be a tone setter for them. They aren't a team that's going to blow you out of the water like a Tampa Bay Lightning would, but he's got to play well next year if they want to have any chance in what's going to be a very competitive Central next year.
Do you think in the playoffs it was more maybe he had a little bit of an injury, or just a mental thing where he just wasn't seeing the puck well and his confidence kept going downhill as he played more games?
I think it's definitely a confidence thing with him, because you look at him, he kind of seems like he's a very confident guy. Some people might pass that off as cocky, but he's very confident in his ability. And I don't know, I think it could have been a situation where players were starting to figure him out. There was a lot of defensive breakdowns as well from the Blues in that Vancouver series, but I kind of feel like he might end up just being a very streaky goaltender rather than being a star that he could have become after the run in 2019. But I think it's probably a confidence thing, as well as the fact that maybe teams are starting to figure out his weaknesses a little bit more now than they knew back then.
Yeah, I mean, you see that in most sports, and we talk baseball later on the show, but a hitter that comes up that no one knows anything about, they may struggle to get him out, but then after 1 year, it's like, all right, we know that he can't hit the high fastball, so we throw that, and they beat him. I mean, the same way in hockey, where okay, you don't really know what Binnington's weakness is. He hops on the scene and is just absolutely incredible, but now you look back and tape and go, okay, maybe high blocker side's a weakness, and then they shoot there, and he's got to adjust. So hopefully next year, though, he adjusts for this team, because it's his team, like you said.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right on that.
Yep. So Alex Pietrangelo was told by the St. Louis Blues to test free agency. They seem to lowball him a little bit, which usually happens in a free agent negotiation process. Is there a chance he wants to return to the Blues, or is his time there finished?
So I approach this 2 different ways. I think he absolutely would like to return if it's possible, but it's very hard for them, because you look at their free agency. They have Vince Dunn as a restricted free agent right now. I think they'd like to keep him despite the fact that he was very shaky in the bubble in Edmonton in the playoffs. But, I don't know if it's the right move for them to not try to get him on a discount, because they do only have $5.15 million in cap space right now. Obviously they're going to make moves to try to get more cap to get him. But you look at Roman Yossi's contract. Roman Yossi just won the Norris last night. He's making $9 million. I'm not going anywhere near that. Like, I think Pietrangelo and Yossi are very similar. I think Yossi's a little bit better. Obviously, we've seen that over the last couple of years. And Pietrangelo is playing some of his best hockey. He played some of his best last season. But I think anything above like 8.75 is probably my limit. I don't think I'd go higher than that. And I think they're right to try to kind of get him on a discount. And I think that, honestly, I think they've seen some of his best hockey already. So how far do you want to go? Do you want to cripple your team for the future? I'm not so sure that they want to do that, but I'm not going anywhere near the $9 million that Yossi got.
So let's say that the Blues, get the cap space to sign him back, but it falls through and they can't. You mentioned Ilya Kovalchuk getting a score with Tarasenko going to be out, but who would be your top? Again, there's no Pietrangelo. Who would be the top player that they go after then with all that money that they have?
Well, I think their first priority is likely to try to get Vince Dunn back on probably a contract that's sitting around $3 million a year, I would say, for a young D-man who's shown a lot of offensive potential. But I think if you look at the free agency market and how that shakes out, it's kind of weak defensively in terms of the really high-end guys. I mean, Torrey Krug is there. That's a guy that they could possibly look at, get another offensive guy in the back end. Now, he's not going to be as good defensively as Pietrangelo is, which is what makes this so hard, is because Pietrangelo is a very sound player in all phases of the game, all three zones, 200 feet. He's very good on both ends, and he was very good offensively in the regular season. But, Torrey Krug's not really good enough defensively. If you want to replace – now, I don't know if they're going to actually go for a defenseman with that money, because I think you look at maybe a goal scorer like Mike Hoffman, who's a free agent from Florida. You could try to get him. But I think defensively, the way that they might go is Nico Mikkola and Scott Perunovich, both prospects that they could bring in there. So I'm assuming they won't spend too much money defensively on the free agent market. I think if they do have cap space and Pietrangelo leaves, I think they look at more of an offensive threat, get a guy there in the top six, possibly Tyler Toffoli, Mike Hoffman. Taylor Hall is a massive long shot. I don't see that happening at all. But that's just the way that the way they operate is very conservatively. So I think that they would not really try to get another high-end D-man like a Krug, who's one of the better ones in this market.
Lastly, before we let you go, why do you believe Jim Montgomery is a perfect fit alongside Craig Berube on this coaching staff?
Well, Jim Montgomery has a lot of experience. I mean, he was 61, 43, and 10 with Dallas. He was very good there. Obviously, he had some problems that arose during this season. And I have no doubt in my mind that the Stars would be in the same spot right now, no matter who the coach is. Now, that's not to take anything away from Rick Bowness. He's done a great job. We all know that he's a very experienced guy. But I think bringing on a former head coach and a former head coach who had success, which is what Montgomery had in his few seasons at Dallas, is huge. And I think that he's a very hard-nosed defensive type guy. He can come in and kind of drive the Blues style, the way that they like to play, physical style. And he can, do a lot of things for them in all phases of their operations. And I think Craig Berube has a great staff. And I think it's just going to continue. And now how long is Montgomery here? Probably only a couple of years, because I think he'll get another shot at being a head coach in the NHL. But he's a great fit, and he can do a lot for the Blues style and the way that they want to coach. I think he fits in perfectly with everyone else on the staff.
Yeah, well, Ethan, I completely agree. And thank you very much for coming on the show with us. And we look forward to reading some of your next articles for the Hockey Writers.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a good one.
You too, man.
So like you said, Alex Pietrangelo is going to be a tough get for the St. Louis Blues, especially to keep him. I agree that they had to try to get a discount. And obviously, Pietrangelo knows his worth. He's only 30 years old, so somebody will offer him around a 7-year deal, probably between 7 to 8.5 per, and that's going to be tough for the Blues to afford. And I think that the Philadelphia Flyers are a sneaky candidate. We talked about it earlier. They have a few defensemen that are free agents already in Haig and Myers are RFAs, and Justin Braun is a UFA. And they haven't talked to their 2 RFAs yet, haven't offered them anything. They're not going to offer Justin Braun something. So there's a lot of cap room on that back end. And a team that had lofty expectations come postseason time, They got hurt by the hiatus. They lost to the Islanders. I think that if they were to sign an Alex Pietrangelo type, they become one of the favorites in the East.
I mean, their problem was the defense. Carter Hart played phenomenal, but an Islanders team that really struggled to score during the regular season found ways to do it against the Flyers. And having a top guy like Pietrangelo is just a confidence booster for the rest of the group, despite also with his play. But, before we head to commercial break and all that, I just want to read a quote from Jordan Binnington about Pietrangelo. He's a pretty dynamic player at both ends of the ice. He'll score a big goal. He'll be out there at the last minute of the game competing. He works hard. He's a big player for us, one of the best players in the NHL. And I did read up that he wants to return. Like, he wants to be a Blue. But, contract, they've been talking. Like, it's not like this is the first time they've opened their mouths. They've been talking over the last year about getting extension. And, he said it sometimes it just doesn't work out with the flat cap. It makes everything so much more difficult. But, besides him leaving as a defenseman, he's leaving as a captain. And, he's a leader, and, we see it as a business. Hockey's a business, but taking the captain out of a room where he helped the team come back from being in the basement of the NHL to winning a cup for the city of St. Louis. I mean, that holds a lot. And to have a guy go because, you don't have the money or, you can't work something out, it's a tough pill to swallow for Blues fans and his teammates. Again, it would be hard for him as well. He's played his whole career with St. Louis. So again, it's a tough thing. I would like to see him return. I don't want him to go to Philly because it makes the Metro just that much tougher. And I mean, as a Ranger fan, an Islander fan, It's going to be hard as it is. Now you want to stockpile the toughest division in hockey even more. I mean, the Flyers can do it. They should because they really need defense. That's their last pretty much piece. They got a great goaltender net. They got the scoring. They weren't really awake in the playoffs, but they have it. It's there. Now they just need a little bit more from the defense, and that would be a nice finishing touch. But, I mean, Edmonton as well, their problem is defense. They got Draisaitl we'll get to later. McDavid. I mean, they have other depth guys that go around them, but they contribute. It's a problem is keeping the puck out of your own net is how you win in the NHL, and he'll help them as well.
I agree. And Edmonton, they have to go full out to get Pietrangelo. That's one of their biggest needs is defense, and he's one of the best defensemen in the league.